Did Congress change Trump, or did Trump change Congress? Because it seems like a lot of things that Trump said on the campaign trail don't really match up with what proposals he's put forward.
I'd say the answer to that is mixed. It's a bit of both. In some respects, Congress has basically used the president to enact its agenda, and on other issues, the president has directed Congress, closer to him on some matters. I guess again, that's what's changed so much. I mean, the old litmus test was ideological conformity and purity. Now it's loyalty to Donald Trump. And the issue there is, I always said when people voted for Donald Trump, there are people who voted for Donald Trump for a few reasons. Some just simply loathed Hillary Clinton, and they maybe didn't particularly like Donald Trump, but they wanted to change so badly. They weren't willing to take a risk on him, even though they might have had some reservations. Then you had other people who were very much for Donald Trump. I said a lot of the people who were his greatest supporters weren't necessarily for him based on policy. They were voting for an attitude. It was more of an attitude, more than a set of policies, because his policies do shift. I mean, other than a wall and tariffs on Mexico and China, I mean, I didn't hear a whole lot of policy, during the presidential campaign from Donald Trump. So again, people were voting more for an attitude, I thought, in many respects. Those who really liked Donald Trump. Again, others who supported him did so because they hated Hillary Clinton or despised her and wanted to change so badly they were willing to take a risk on Donald, even if they had some reservations about it. So, I mean, that's kind of the lay of the land. That's where we are.
You did not vote for Trump.
No.
Who did you vote for?
I ran in Evan McMullen.
Okay.
He didn't get on the ballot in Pennsylvania. He was running in a number of states, and he had been on the Republican staff. I felt he was the best Republican running. I didn't want to vote. I didn't. I respect Bill Weld, who was running on the Libertarian ticket. Had he been the top of that ticket, I probably would have voted for that ticket. But he was not the top of the ticket. I didn't have any confidence in Gary Johnson, and so that's kind of where I was on this thing.
How did it feel? Did you feel a greater sense of urgency to speak up since Trump was elected, or is it just the timing that you have been now co-chairman of Tuesday Group?
I guess my answer to that would be this. I don't look for these issues. They just kind of come to me. In other words, let's just start with the first week of the administration. I wasn't looking to get in the middle of this whole travel ban discussion. But the issue came to my doorstep, literally. I have a very large Syrian population in this 15th district, largely in Lehigh County, mostly the Allentown area. They're predominantly Christian. So I get a call on that Saturday morning. I think the administration is maybe a week old. I think it was I think it was the Saturday after the Women's March. It was inaugurated, I think, on a Friday, and the Saturday was the Women's March. And then the following Saturday, I think, was when...
Yeah, Friday he did it, and then Saturday is when a lot of people were stuck in limbo at the airports.
Correct.
Because they didn't know what to do.
Yeah, but it was literally within the first 2 weeks of this administration. And I guess it was a text message from my son, who's up at Penn State. He was a junior in engineering up there. And he says, yeah, he was in his, I guess that was the spring semester of his junior year. And he says, Dad, can you, he says, I need to talk to you this morning. This is a Saturday morning, and my son's up at Penn State. And I'm thinking, oh, this can't be good. It's too early to be hearing from him. This is not a good situation. And so I call him. I said, what's going on? He says, Joey Asali called me. And his family's stuck at the Philadelphia airport. They're not letting him in the country. And I said, I don't know what's going on. But he said, but he called me. He said he was just up here visiting me. A few weeks before. So I said, okay. So I get off the phone and I turn the television on. And I see this mayhem at the airports. So I called my son back. I said, tell Joey to have his mom call me right now, or give me his mom's number. And so I call his mother. And who happens to live only a few blocks from us, in the same neighborhood. And she's telling me I have 6 family members, who are have immigrant visas. They're Christian, by the way. They've been in process for 13 years. They are not refugees. And they're not being allowed in the country. Now this, apparently, and I said, well, this is a solid, give me the, I need their names and their flight number, so I can, track this down. And of course, this is a Saturday, the administration's 1 week old. And so she gives me all this information. And I called the Majority Leader, Kevin McCarthy, out in California. I said, Kevin, I got a little problem here. This mayhem at the airport. I said, I just read this order. It just came out last night. It was a Friday night it came out. And I said, these people aren't refugees. I said, they have immigrant visas. They're going to be stamped. The moment they get in this country, they're going to be green card holders. But apparently they're at Philadelphia airport, and I can't find anybody. It's Saturday morning. This is a new administration. They don't have their people in place. I mean, who do I call? I said, well, you got to call the White House. I said, okay. So I said, I need to, who should I call at the White House? But who? I mean, who's around? And so he gave me a name. A guy who would work for us. He's now in legislative affairs, or he just gotten appointed. I know the guy well, and I called him. And I said, I got this problem. I called him on his cell phone Saturday morning. Went through it all with him. And as I'm talking to him on the phone, I said, I said, this guy, I said, I see there in Kennedy Airport there's a translator from Afghanistan. They're not letting them in the country. We just passed a law in December to make it easier for these guys to, in the defense bill, to allow these translators in the country. What is going on? I said, this order, I said, did this order get run by the Department of Defense? No. State? No. Homeland Security? No. How about Justice? No. No. I said, well, you have to suspend this order immediately, at least enforcement of it, until you can come up with a sensible policy, because this is just chaotic. And these people, then I found out that my constituents, they're arriving on like a 7:30, 7:45 a.m. flight, and they were sent home within 3 hours on the same plane. And we didn't know that until shortly after. We couldn't speak to anybody, and I said, this is just, they boarded the plane illegally. But when they arrived here, their visas were revoked. They were revoked in midair. And so apparently there are about 200 people just like them were revoked in midair. And so it was a mayhem. So we took us 10 days to sort it out. We got them back in. They were sent back. It was a nightmare for the family. But the point is, I didn't really look. So I was asked by the press about this. I said, well, this order is seriously flawed. It's being horribly implemented, and the enforcement of it should be halted immediately. So for that, people said, some people said, you're bashing the administration. I said, well, no, this is just a terrible policy. And it certainly, it was not well conceived, and it's been horribly implemented. I mean, there's not much more I can say about it. Even if you agree with the policy, you have to confess that this is not being well implemented. Just turn on the television. And so that's kind of how I got involved on that issue. I wasn't looking for that fight. But, hey, you know what? But sometimes, you don't have to, in this business, you don't have to go looking for controversy. It finds you. It finds you. So that's what happened on that particular issue. And then there were other issues over the course of the months. Then healthcare came up, and like you said, the president on healthcare said, everybody's going to be covered, it's going to cost less, it's going to be beautiful. Okay, so then there's a House healthcare bill that comes out, and it's going to be problematic for states like ours.
Who expanded Medicaid?
That expanded Medicaid.
Mm-hmm.
And I talked at length with Governor Kasich. Ohio had expanded Medicaid as well, and so I had many conversations with him at length about how to proceed, and many of us were feeling that the way the House bill was structured at that moment, that there was too hard of a landing on the Medicaid expanding for the Medicaid expansion states, and that as these people were going to be transitioned off of Medicaid and put into the exchanges, they would be receiving a maximum $4,000 tax credit, which would have been sufficient for many to buy insurance, so they would go naked, bare, and they would be uncovered. And so I said, this is a fundamental flaw of the bill. There are other issues in the bill too. I mean, I always thought the Planned Parenthood provision, whether you love Planned Parenthood or hate Planned Parenthood, isn't the point. I didn't think it should be part of this bill. It really had nothing to do with Obamacare. And I raised these issues with the president. And in one meeting with 13 other members of our Tuesday group, and he took it he listened very respectfully, and he was, he seemed like he was interested. And I also gave him Governor Kasich's proposal on Medicaid, as well as Sandoval, Kasich, Snyder, and Hutchison, 4 governors, Michigan, Nevada, Arkansas, Ohio. And they accepted it, and they looked at it, and didn't make any decisions, but that was on a Tuesday. Then on a Thursday, I get invited back with 16 or 17 other members, and 17 of us, including me. And, the president goes around the room, asks everybody how they're voting. And on the second one, I said, I'm opposed to the bill in its current form. Well, he says, why? I said, because, well, for the same reasons I told you on Tuesday. That's what I told him. I said, same reasons. And I started a list of them. He didn't take it well, and he started, jaw boning me. And says, you're going to destroy the Republican Party. It's, you're going to take down the health care bill, ruin tax reform, just going on and on and on. As I interrupted him and said, you're telling me that if we don't pass this health care bill in this form, we won't be able to do tax reform because the baseline's not low enough? That's exactly right. When you lose, you lose. It's like, so I listened to this for a while. It's going around. And and then after everybody else says yes or lean yes, he comes back, looks at me and says, you still a hard no? I said, I'm still a no, Mr. President. He starts going off at me again. I said, well, and I started interrupting him, and he says, you didn't want to talk about it anymore. So that's just, but again, I wasn't looking for that fight, but the bill was flawed. And, and candidly on that one, I felt that the president, if he wants to change the healthcare system for the whole country, as chief executive, he has the responsibility to present his plan, his ideas, and then go out and sell them. Simply saying, put a bill on my desk and I'll sign it. Mm-hmm. It's not my idea of presidential leadership. That's not my idea of it. And so, if you ask why I think healthcare reform didn't succeed, is because the president wasn't fully engaged. Now, there are problems on the congressional side too, to be fair. I mean, he has to accept some of that responsibility. If you're going to change the healthcare system, and you're the commander-in-chief, you have to lay the proposal down on the table, your plan, your ideas, and then Congress will chop on it. That's just a function of leadership. He really didn't do that. Now, he did a better job on tax reform. But on healthcare, I think there was a failing, and Congress too, I think, didn't fully appreciate the challenges of replacement. I had tempered a lot of my rhetoric on Obamacare. I voted against it in 2010, but I also realized after President Obama was reelected in 2012 that this law was going to bake in for another 4 years, and it really was not going to be repealed outright over those next 4 years. And so this was going to, it's like the tree is now growing. and you're simply not going to be able to unplant this tree. And so I've always felt that on health care that there were parts of that law that do need to be repealed, parts of it that need to be replaced, parts of it need to be reformed, parts of it retained. I mean, but that wasn't a bumper sticker. That's not a bumper sticker, a slogan. And I think a lot of my colleagues were stuck in the 2010, 2012 cycle where repeal, replace was a more viable position because law really hadn't been implemented at that point, or just beginning to be implemented.
Trump won your district by 7 points?
Yeah, about 7, yeah.
And you won yours by 20.
Yeah.
Did you feel then, because a lot of people said because Trump won, they felt a referendum to go along with him on things. Did you feel conflicted in that way on these issues? That the voters elected him, therefore...
Yeah, well, they elected me too, and by a larger margin. So I guess my feeling on that is this: there are a lot of people who supported Donald Trump, and many knew how I felt about his candidacy. Many said, we voted for Trump and we voted for you too. Not simply just to support him, but also to keep an eye on him. Because, like I said, a lot of people who voted for Donald Trump were simply voting against Hillary Clinton. They had some reservations about Donald Trump. These are people who voted for him. Okay, I'm not talking about the people who voted against him and hated him, but or disliked him. I'm talking about the people who supported him. Like I always said, I saw a poll recently that showed of Republicans, about 1/3 strongly support him because they believe in him, about half support him but have reservations, and about 20% don't really support him. And so of Republicans, and just Republicans. So that's that's sort of the Republican Party at the moment. So, but the point is, the people of this district expect me to work with the president, not for the president. That the people in this district recognize that we have separate but equal branches of government. And when Barack Obama was president, I listened to a lot of my colleagues and a lot of my constituents talk about Congress's Article 1 powers and that they should be much more
used more sparingly.
The Article 1 powers should be asserted more often.
Yeah.
That we should.
Oh.
Yeah, that we should assert them with Barack Obama as president. And I can make a case that we did in many cases. And there has been an erosion of congressional power over decades. I can make a case that presidential authorities have grown. And again, I'm not saying this didn't start with Barack Obama. It started before him, but it has, but maybe it accelerated a lot under Barack Obama. And so, but now that Donald Trump's president, I say to some of those folks, I said, look, what we were talking about with Article 1 with Barack Obama and his executive excesses, I agree. Barack Obama exceeded his authorities on many occasions, and and some occasions was stopped by the courts. And so I said, I believe very strongly that we need to be a check on the executive branch of government, regardless of who's the occupant of the White House. Whether it's Barack Obama or Donald Trump, we have an obligation to exercise oversight and work with the president when he or she is on the right track and check him or her if they're moving in the wrong direction. And some people, I always say, like, if anybody wants me to be a sycophant to this or any other president, well, then they elected the wrong guy. I mean, they're like, you can find there are plenty of sycophants running around Washington, and I'm not going to be one of them. But I'm not going to be one of them. If you want a sycophant, we can, there are plenty of them in D.C., and I could make a case. That's not helping matters right now.
And I had heard after the ACA vote, I saw you on Meet the Press. Chuck Todd asked you about "you're destroying the Republican Party" comment, and you said you will not stand down. You will not back down when you think something is important.
I'll hold my ground, sure.
I read Politico did a cover story with you, and you was talking about how you were taking this position so seriously with Trump in the White House, and then a few weeks later you announced that you're stepping away. I was just confused by that. You seem to be relishing the opportunity to serve as that check.
Yeah.
And then you announced that you're leaving.
Yeah, well, I made a decision. Like I said, I had been thinking about, people said, are you retiring are you retiring from Congress with Donald Trump? I said, well, that's a reason, not the reason I'm leaving. I mean, there are multiple reasons that I'm leaving. One, as I said, since 2013, I started thinking about it seriously. And then during that cycle, that 2013-2014 cycle, John Boehner asked me to be I was on the Appropriations Committee, and then during that cycle, there were a number of members of the Appropriations Committee who, for one reason or another, left Congress due to retirement, resignation, or death. And over about an 18-month period, about 8 people senior to me on that committee departed Congress, or planned to depart Congress. And I realized that I'd become a subcommittee chairman on appropriations, great place to be. So, hey, I'm going to do another term. And at the same time, John Boehner asked me to become chairman of the ethics committee. So I said, okay, I'll run in 2014, which I did. And then we went through a lot there. And I was thinking, maybe I won't run again in 2016. And then I thought, well, maybe I'll get a seat on the Intel committee. But I thought I had a pretty good shot of getting that. And then with John Boehner, and then of course, he departed us in midterm. And I ran again, was successful in 2016, and we had a presidential cycle, which I didn't really enjoy that campaign because it just felt like I felt like 2016 was an issue-free campaign. So bottom line is, I just decided though that this cycle, after going through all this, I'm 57. I am healthy and young enough to do something else. I don't want to overstay. I've run for office 13 times, 4 times for the State House, 2 times for the State Senate, and 7 times for Congress. I'm 13-0. I'm not going to spoil a perfect record. And candidly, I really had no serious political threat from the left and no credible threat from the right. I mean, when I made my announcement, I had made a decision probably back in early summer, like I'm going to say, June, just before July 4th. I told my family that I wouldn't run again because I had been talking about it even since the beginning of the year, since beginning of this year, I guess, from February forward. We were having these conversations, and I was leaning against running. And then in June, I told my family I wouldn't do it again. I announced it, after Labor Day. That was my plan. I announced it, not too long after Labor Day.
It just kind of broke.
What's that?
It broke
yeah,
without you really.
Yeah, it broke because I started to tell a few people, and like I said, I have a lot of really wonderful colleagues, but they have big mouths, and and I realize that you're not going to be able to control an announcement like this because the more people you tell, the greater the likelihood is that it's going to leak out. So I had written the statement, and so my announcement really, my announcement came about maybe a week to 10 days sooner than I would have liked. But the decision had been made. It just, once it leaked out, I said I just better put out the statement. And so I put the statement out. I guess it was on a Wednesday or Thursday night. I was planning on. I was going to actually have a party on Sunday, where I was going to state my intentions there, and I was going to do it publicly a few days later. But then even then, I initially was going to do it about a week or two after that, but then as things progressed, I'll do it on this Sunday. Then that Thursday, it all broke out, and I said, well, the best laid plans, so they go. So that's what happened. So that, and my wife and family, I think, would have, that's all they've ever known, is being elected. I mean, this is almost 28 years, so there were those issues as well. So this thing from a personal standpoint, and also too, in the next cycle. I mean, I don't want to run another campaign where all we're going to do is talk about the president. This whole election is going to be about the president, like it or not. That's what this. I mean, it'll be a midterm. Midterms are traditionally not very kind to the party of the president, just for historical reasons. Forget about Donald Trump for the moment. It's just historical.
Going back to what you talked about, you mentioned that Trump said and did a lot of things on the campaign trail that would have disqualified a lot of people previously. Were you
like what we said about John McCain?
Yeah.
About about Mexicans and rapists and the Indiana judge.
The Access Hollywood tape.
And getting in the fight with Khizr Khan and his son's death.
Did his election on election night? Are you disillusioned with the electorate? I'm not sure if that's the correct word, but are you disappointed in the electorate?
Well, I felt at that time during that campaign. I mean, in a nation of over 300 million people, this was the best we could do. Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. I mean, really? I mean, I think that's how a lot of people felt. I mean, I've heard over the years people have said, "Oh, the choices are terrible," but this year I thought they really weren't bad. They really were bad choices. Really were bad choices, and so I guess what I'm saying to you is that I think one of the challenges our country faces is that people like to say, what is wrong with our country? What politically speaking, what's wrong with our country? And I've often said that it seems to me that we have a primary problem. Our primary system isn't working the way it's supposed to work. I see it at the presidential level. I see it I can see it at the congressional level as well, House and Senate, where it seems that to get nominated, that the political reward is to play very hard to a base. On both sides. This is Democrat and Republican. It's true on the Republican side. It's becoming even more true on the Democratic side. Watch this. All these Democrats running right now for office, for Congress, you know what the litmus test is going to be? Impeaching the president. Or, will you vote to impeach the president, or will you sign up for single-payer health care. I mean, that's going to be the Democratic litmus test. I mean, that's where they've gone, full Bernie. And so I think this is a problem, that the primary process really rewards people who tack hard to the base, and in some cases to the fringe. And where consensus, where consensus and bipartisan dialogue, that ultimately would yield, heaven forbid, compromise, would not be rewarded.
You're not the only moderate or pragmatic person who's stepping down. The Congress stands to lose a lot of people. A lot of people are resigning.
Dave Reichert, Frank Lobiondo in Jersey. I suspect there will be others. Eliana Ross-Lehtinen down in Florida, and I'm probably forgetting a few right now. But those are the 3 or 4 that immediately just jump out at me. Who said they're not running again, and all represent competitive districts like mine. I mean, they're all, and there are others, some too, who are leaving because of I think Blake Farenthold and Joe Barton are leaving. They're, I think, in largely safer seats, but there were some issues there that forced some others. Yeah, there were a couple other committee chairs who were just kind of timed out. They're retiring because their committee chairs are done, and Bob Goodlatte and Lamar Smith, I think, in both pretty safe seats, but they're just getting out because they've been in a long time and it's time to go. They don't want to go back to being a backbench member again after being a committee chair for so long.
In the macro, I know micro to you, your family,
Yeah.
what's happening. But in the macro picture, are you concerned about this country if more moderates like yourself keep stepping away?
Yeah, I'm worried about it. Not just from the Republican standpoint.
Yeah, from both Republican and Democrat.
I'll tell you, I talked to a lot of my colleagues, both Republican and Democrat. I can tell you right now, a lot of my Democratic colleagues, who I'd say who are more centrist, are very worried that if the Democrats retake the House next cycle, that they will be under tremendous pressure to push a hard left agenda. No question about it. Many of them are in absolute fear of that. They see what's happening on the Republican side, and they're just afraid that the mirror image may happen on their side, that they're going to be under tremendous pressure.
And if the Democrats retake the House and there's not many moderate Republicans to help them craft the legislation towards the middle, like that
Correct.
coalition, and you're not going to be there. I mean,
Right. And
how concerned are you? I know that you won't be there anymore,
Yeah.
but are you that this is bad for the country? Or are you?
I do believe it's bad for the country that people who are, I always consider myself kind of a center-right member of Congress in a center-right district in a center-right country. It's always where I was, and people, I feel that I've been very much in step on many of the issues that my constituents care about. Now, so I'm not alarmed. I guess the whole concern that I have going forward is how will we accomplish anything in a divided government?